Welcome to episode 45 of In Touch with iOS, a podcast that talks about iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies, plus tips, apps, and gear. I am your host, Dave Ginsburg, and my guest this week, returning to the show, is Chuck Joyner. How you doing, Chuck?
I'm doing good, Dave. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, an absolute pleasure to have you back here. And in fact, we just did an episode not even 2 days ago, so we're on the roll here with some shows here. Make sure to go out to macvoices.com to check out a great show that we did with Kelly Gamont about podcasting, right?
It was a lot of fun. It was fun to get a couple different perspectives. You guys have had some changes in both of your podcasting lives.
Yep. And it keeps evolving, and and I just want to keep consistent product out here for everybody. And I'm getting a lot of good feedback, everybody listening. So I'm really thrilled. Really appreciate everybody listening, getting some good download numbers, and just keep listening. I want everybody to listen to some good stuff we talk about here. So this week I thought we would hit about a couple things. We have a lot of news stories this week. There was quite a bit of news that we'll get into. Is have some good discussion and commentary, and then I think I mentioned it, but I'll mention it again, that I have bought a second HomePod, and I wanted to talk about my experience with pairing it, because it's interesting, and it sounds great. So I'll leave it at that. And I know, Chuck, you haven't done that yet, so we'll have a little fun with that. So, and then I thought I'd talk a little bit about cellular carriers, because a lot of discussion been out this week about the eSIM, which I reviewed in the last episode. Actually, no, maybe I didn't. I think I know I've talked about it. I talked about so many places I have to remember where I'm talking about things. So the eSIM, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, is part of the news. So, and we'll have a full hour here of a great discussion here. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first article that was in our notes here I wanted to talk about was the fact that Apple released an updated version of iOS. It was 12.1.2, but it's only for the iPhone currently, if you noticed that, right, Chuck?
Yeah, that's and my phone keeps nagging me and saying, "Hey, it's out there," and I just haven't gotten the chance to update it. But I thought that was interesting, because we see the updates that cross all the iOS devices. Yeah,
it was just for the iPhone, and it's really covering, I think it does all iPhones, but specifically what it fixed was the eSIM activation, which, if anybody doesn't know what the eSIM is the electronic version of a SIM that's available in the iPhone XR, the XS, and the XS Max. So it fixed that piece, and then, of course, this was the most important of it all, is the cellular connectivity in Turkey, right? I guess there were some issues in Turkey that you couldn't connect with your 10R or 10S or 10S Max. So, and I'm sure there were some bug fixes somewhere, but they that's really all they really said as far as any updates go. So it's pretty straightforward, I think. Don't you think?
Yeah, and I also think this is a good time for everyone to appreciate just how complex maintaining all of the Apple devices is. I mean, like you said, the eSIM is the X series, but Apple is a global company, and so if something is going on in Turkey, they have to get it fixed. If it's going on in Guam, they have to get it fixed. And here in the U.S., we tend to think of ourselves, unfortunately, as the center of the universe, and we're really not. And it's easy to forget that.
Nothing against Turkey. I've never been there before, but if I have any listeners from Turkey, welcome. I hope you're listening. I would rather your cellular service be working than anything else. So I'm glad they fixed it. I know there was also some discussion about the whole thing with Qualcomm and the patent infringement. So that was mentioned too with this fix as well. So but they didn't give too much detail on that, did they?
Not that I saw, no. And after a while, some of the patent infringement stuff and all, I have to admit, I tune it out at some point, because
I agree. Me too. It's just I get tired of it. So, next story I want to talk about this again. All these stories will be linked in our show notes. On Mac Rumors, there was a story about T-Mobile being the third U.S. carrier to now offer eSIM support on the iPhone XS, XS Max, and the XR. I was pretty excited about this. I've talked about this in my Apple user group. I did a presentation on that. I actually mentioned it briefly yesterday during my friends at the Silicon Valley Apple user group. I did a presentation yet. Shout out to those folks. And T-Mobile became the third carrier that now is offering eSIM support. What eSIM basically is, it's a way of being able to get your service on an electronic SIM. And it kind of amazes me that the old-time SIM that's been around forever, a little piece of, I don't know if you call it a piece of plastic or a piece of cardboard, really, that has been in on these phones for so long, why we haven't had this sooner. And I know the carriers were very resistant to it, but it looks like they're embracing it. If you read this article, what was your thoughts on that?
Dave, it feels like it's way past time.
It was.
I think there's been a lot of discussion about how the physical SIMs lock you in because, at least in theory, you have to go to the AT&T store or the Verizon store or whatever to get that little piece of plastic or cardboard or whatever. And with this, it theoretically frees things up a lot. Right. I know a little bit about it. I don't know enough about it. I'm sure that sooner or later they're going to find another way to try to lock you in. But on the other hand, it certainly makes switching carriers easier, I think, and it introduces a new level of convenience for the customer if the carriers will let you have that convenience. Actually,
I think they're going to. Right now, the way T-Mobile was advertising it, they said that only their prepaid services would work, not the postpaid. But I seem that there are some workarounds, and I did actually talk to technical support. I'm a T-Mobile customer, so I wanted to know about it a little more. But I think AT&T and Verizon are also offering similar services, as well as being able to potentially put your postpaid service on to the eSIM. The other big advantages for those of you who travel internationally, now you'll have the option, if you want, to be able to activate. What I want to do is I want to activate my eSIM from my primary account, then have the option to have the regular SIM that's in the iPhone, and then that will be the international service. So now you'll have two phones in one, basically, because you'll have both cards activated. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a great idea, and I love the idea of now being, well, without jumping through some other hoops, because there are other ways to get multiple phone numbers on your phone, but to have two actual full service carriers on one phone, I know a number of people that carry two phones, one for personal, one for business.
I seem to know somebody that carries four phones at once. It's our good friend, Mr. Pokemon, Barry Falk. He's always carrying at least four phones. So,
why am I not surprised?
Yeah, again, shout out to Barry again. Seems every week I mention Barry, so I know he'll be listening. So there are people who just it's their business. They need to have multiple phones, but at least this is going to help alleviate that a little bit. You won't need to carry two phones. Now you have two phones in one.
So wait a minute. So I want to make sure I got that right. So now Barry carries four. Now he'll only have to carry two.
Yeah, so you can have two and two, right? Yeah. But now the problem is he has to have four because of the Pokemon Go, because each phone has to do its activities on Pokemon. So I think he'll stick with four.
Okay. All right. Seems like a lot of money to me to play Pokemon, but hey, whatever turns you on.
Well, I think work helps that a little bit with him too. So that's another story. Anyway, let's move on to the next story I put in here. The merger of T-Mobile and Sprint. New York Times article was in our show notes here. It looks like it got the green light from U.S. regulators, which I don't know if I'm excited about it or if or not. What were your thoughts on that?
I think this may be good because this may the combination of the two may provide a genuine alternative to AT&T and Verizon. Up to this point, I don't know how happy you've been. Apparently, you've been happy with T-Mobile.
I am very happy.
Yeah, I tried both of those. I think I've tried all the services at one time or another, and just the coverage for me was not there. So now,
in your hometown, in your area.
Well, in the areas that I frequent, put it that way. Maybe not necessarily in where I live, but in the area that I need phone coverage and phone service for. It was a bit lacking, and so the two of them together, now maybe it can be the third leg of the competition, which would be very, very nice instead of being, at least my perception, is a little more regional player.
Right.
Hopefully, be a bigger player.
And we're going to talk about cellular services. That's good that you've experienced a lot of them. I have as well. But Sprint seems to be an okay carrier. I don't think they had many problems. They had gone through a lot of changes too. But I think the biggest motivation of this merger is the 5G and being able to team up with one of these two powerhouse companies that's going to get the 5G out there quicker than most. And I know I read another article that AT&T is going to already be releasing their 5G services next year to certain cities around the U.S. So 5G will be another whole ball game, and that, I think that's going to motivate that a little bit too. So, but no, I welcome it. I think I'm happy with it. Again, like I said, I'm a happy T-Mobile customer, so it won't affect me at all because. But if anything, they can merge the networks, but I know that can be a challenge too sometimes, getting networks merged. So,
oh yeah, and not just the networks, but the companies themselves, the different cultures, trying to put the two together. Hopefully, they can pull it off, because so often you see that kind of thing. Sometimes it works, and you have a stronger company that comes out of it, and sometimes you just have a company that is fighting itself. It seems from the inside.
Yeah. So. Should be interesting. Should be definitely interesting. So, and then the other news story that was kind of exciting, I guess, if you're an Amazon Echo user, is Amazon Echo now is working with Apple Music. Wow, I was just kind of a surprise that finally happened. It does now allow you to be able to set it up through the skills, and you ask her to play some music. It's going to play it from Amazon Music. Were you surprised at this at all?
I was definitely surprised. I have set it up because I have both a HomePod and Echo devices in my house, and so this definitely spreads the audio out around the house. You can also set Apple Music to be your default. So if you don't set it as your default, you have to do something like, hey,
you have to tell,
play AC/DC from Apple Music. But if you set it up as a default, you can just say play AC/DC and it'll take off.
It's worked great, and
it has. The one thing I want to see if I can do, because I haven't done this yet, is I need to see if I can get it channeled through my Sonos speakers. That would be very, very nice. But so many reasons, you can dance around all this, and we all are speculating. Yeah. But it seems like Amazon and Apple have called a truce to maybe some of their fighting.
They sure have. I mean, they're selling their products again. So,
well, they're selling their products. They threw some of the, as I understand it, all the refurbishers off of Amazon, which
I'm fine with that.
Well, you hate to see anybody, not have access to that market. But on the other hand, if you're big enough and you're doing a good enough job, you can probably get the word out and survive, on your own.
Yeah, I guess see that. I was more happy about it because some of those refurbishers, there's a trust involved too. I mean, obviously Amazon wouldn't allow them on the service if they weren't trustworthy and they weren't getting a lot of bad reviews. I mean, just like using eBay. When it comes to buying products, but I guess I see where you're at on that.
Yeah, fair. I mean, that's a very fair point. But what intrigued me though is we've heard rumors, we've had speculation, you've heard calls for a cheaper HomePod, and because folks just don't want to spend quite that much money necessarily to put it in every room.
Right.
There also are a lot of people that are not as discerning about music as maybe some of us are, and so they're happy or they're content, I should say, with a lower quality speaker. And all of the Echo devices probably fall into that category. Some are a little better than others. Right. The one thing that's interesting about the Echo devices, in my opinion, is that I think pretty much all of them can be either Bluetooth paired or hardwire paired with a better external speaker. Right. So if you want
our physical plugins too, I think too.
Yeah. So if you want to improve the quality of that Echo Dot that's in your basement, you can go out and spend a little money. And I mean, my preference is JBL speakers, or for that matter, the audio engines that are in back of me. You can plug that in, and hey, you've got a really nice sounding system. So it may not have all the acoustic niceties of a HomePod, but it also may fit your bill. So a lot of advantages here. I honestly, I think for both Amazon and Apple, because Amazon, I don't think they've had as much success as they would have liked penetrating the music subscription market. And now I don't know if they've ceded it to Apple, but they definitely have become a lot more viable player from the hardware standpoint.
Right. And I have two links, actually two links that relates to the Amazon Echo. We have it in the news, but I wanted to just kind of continue on this as a topic a little bit here. Our friend Allison Sheridan did a nice blog post on how to enable Apple Music. I'm going to have that in the link in the show notes as well. And as well as the 9 to 5 Mac article we have out there that shows how to enable it. Did you find it to be an easy way to enable it through the Alexa? Oops, I shouldn't have said that. The device's app.
Yeah, it was a piece of cake. I mean,
it was. I found so too. I mean, the skill is very easy and very easy to set up. And I think anybody who does it today, it's on your iPhone. You can do it on your iPad as well. And it was very easy. Yes.
Yeah. It'll take you a grand total of, if you take one of those articles, it'll take you probably 2 minutes, if that. And if you don't have one of those articles in front of you, it might take you 4 minutes. But you can get it done, and it starts working right away. And so far, so good.
Yeah, and it's awesome. And you definitely can go in and set it as your default. There are other music services also available, of course, on the Echo's app, including Pandora and I think iHeartRadio, as well as Amazon's Prime Music. You know, I'm a Prime subscriber. I'm assuming you are as well. And they include some music as far as the Prime Music, but you have to pay extra to get more of their catalog. I still find that I think Apple Music to me has got a better choice as far as music goes.
David, I get kind of wound up on this because everybody wants to talk about, they have 10,000 more songs or 15,000 more songs, one of the other. And it's like, okay, first of all, I'm not going to listen to 15,000 songs.
No,
period.
I mean, we used to have 60,000 songs. I have 60,000 songs in my library of hard drives. So exactly. I never would listen in a million years.
Exactly. So the question becomes, does it have the music you want? And I have to say though, there's something interesting about the service, the basic Prime service, the music that comes with the basic Prime service. If you tell it to play an artist, it will play that artist, but it'll play something that you probably have never heard of before. Yeah. And it's like, then you ask it, okay, so what album is this from, or where did this come from? And it's a deep track or something very obscure. Yeah. And so they can say that they've got that particular artist on the service. It's just not probably what you were really expecting or looking for. And that's not necessarily bad. In fact, actually, I've discovered some tracks that I really like from some artists that I know that I never heard before. So it's a double-edged sword. But most of the time, for me, if I say either S lady, A lady, whoever, this is what I want to listen to, that's what I want to listen to.
Right. So no, I agree. And then, like I said, I'm happy Apple Music's on the devices. I'm like you. I have both. We're crazy technology people that love to have devices in our homes, and as I have it next to me here that I'm talking. That's why I had to be careful to say it. I'm sure you have yours nearby too. You even have one in the bathroom. You have it all over the house. So that's what's great about it. So you can ask it, and now if you want to play music through Apple Music, it's a good deal. So anyway,
before we leave this, I have to ask you: didn't I remember that you had the Google device as well?
I do.
You do.
In fact, I have the Google Home Hub. I just bought because I was able to get it for a very good deal. I think it was like $100. And I've actually been playing around with the Google Home Hub, and that's a small TV, little screen. And it actually works pretty well. I'm actually very impressed with it because you can tell it to you ask Google to play things like on YouTube. In fact, I did it with your show. I asked, can you play Mac Voices? And it would come up with the latest episode, and it plays it right through YouTube. And having that small little screen, I mean, of course, Amazon has theirs as well. I mean, they have their screens. But I thought for the price, it was pretty cool. I mean, it's limited what it does. But I do it just more to dabble into technology to see what the experience is, and it wasn't that terribly expensive for me to get into that. So, but yes, right. I have the Home Mini, and which is still in a drawer actually, and the Google Home Hub. So yeah, they're good products too.
Just checking.
No. I'm glad you asked. And I mean, I think that's what's great about this technology now. There's choices, and you have it's forcing Apple, it's forcing Amazon, it's forcing Google to be more innovative with these products. So, and definitely, I think they all have their good pluses and their minuses. So.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how much effort it takes to build them into the ecosystem that is your particular home. And I'm talking about whether you are Windows or an Android person or an Apple and iOS person, how many compromises you have to make to cross brands. And sometimes you feel like there are no compromises. And that's one thing about the Apple Music now, that it feels like that has eliminated a problem there for me.
Smart. I mean, Apple Music's available on the Google Play Store, so you can play Apple Music on an Android device. I mean, I have an Android device. I'm actually able to play it, and it's like no different. Again, me wanting to be involved with technology, and me being in IT support, especially, I get people asking me questions about Android. It's important to me anyway, is to have a device so I can see what they experience. And the experience with Apple Music on the Android is just as good as iPhone.
Good to know. Good to know.
So, but anyway, let's change gears here a little bit. I thought this topic would be kind of interesting for us to talk about is cellular carriers. Everybody is always asking me what cellular carriers, what carrier would you like, or what do you want to go with? I've had experiences, a number of them, and as well as you have as well, and how well they work with the iPhone. I was an AT&T customer for quite a long time. I mean, it was at least 10 or 12 years, and I just got really just disgusted the way they were helping me in keeping my bill cheap, honestly. And plus, not having the plan that's not unlimited. I mean, if I would have went with the unlimited plan with AT&T versus who I'm now with T-Mobile, we would have been paying at least another $40 to $80 in difference in price, and that's a big difference. T-Mobile has really done a really good job of having really good coverage in most areas. And again, like we talked at the beginning, you said that you were having some challenges with T-Mobile and other carriers. So, give me your thoughts as far as what carriers you like. I mean, you're with AT&T now, right?
I'm with AT&T. I've been with AT&T for a while. I think I've been with AT&T since I first started doing the Apple devices. But I've dabbled with some of the other carriers with secondary phones, taking advantage of the 30-day offers. And so I have an iPhone in one hand and an iPhone from the other carrier in another hand, and you travel around and see where your coverage is. And that's the way that I was testing it out. And it's sort of like your cable company. They're the carriers or they're the companies you kind of love to hate, because when they work, it's great. But when they don't, boy, you get really frustrated, because it always seems like there's going to be a failure. It's right when you feel like you need it the most. Right. That said, though, AT&T has been pretty good to me, with the possible exception of the billing, which is, I mean, that I think is any of them. But if I've had service issues, if I've had billing issues, if I've had anything like that, I can't speak to T-Mobile. One thing that does bug me about AT&T, not enough to drive me away, but that if I have an iPad that has the cellular chip in it, they want $15 a month. $15 a month to add that onto my plan. I get no more data. I get no more anything. Right. I can handle an activation fee. That's okay. All right. So you got to do some paperwork or push some buttons. That's fine. But $15 extra a month just so I can have it? No, I'll just piggyback it off of my phone if I want to.
And that's what I do. And I didn't buy the cellular version of my iPad for that exact reason. I mean, it's just, it's silly. I mean, if you want your iPad to work, and if you're not in an Wi-Fi area, then use your hotspot. the great thing about T-Mobile is they do give you a little more perks. Some of the things that I like is when I travel using GoGo in-flight on American Airlines, you get free Wi-Fi for I think it's like an hour. You get unlimited texting and on the flight for the duration of the flight. So they're giving that perk. Free Netflix. They're giving me the standard. They give you standard the $10 a month or whatever the plan is for the standard. So I pay the extra $3 a month, and I'm paying $3 for Netflix. So there's another perk all by itself as well. I'm a baseball fan. They have a T-Mobile Tuesdays program. Because I don't see any of the stuff that AT&T does. I've tried to explore. I know they have this thing called AT&T Thanks, but I didn't find anything of value of that. So they're giving us a little more in the way of perks. Like I said, I was a baseball fan. Come April, they'll give me a free subscription to MLB at Bat. That's a $200 subscription all by itself if you're a baseball fan. May not be as important to you, but I think a lot of what T-Mobile has offered is that's what really enticed me to switch to them, as well as their coverage.
Yeah, I forget who I'm afraid I will attribute it to the wrong company, so I won't say a company name. But there was, I think, a rental car company that said, us, we try harder. We're number 2, we try harder. And I think when you're down a little farther, when you're not one of the big guys, you probably have to do those things to try to add some extra value. Right. And it certainly doesn't hurt, for MLB to have that much more of an audience.
They got a big partnership with T-Mobile.
Yeah, so it's again interesting ways that everybody decides to compete. Right. For you, it's a value. Netflix would be nice, but it really doesn't do anything for me. Baseball, sure. I couldn't care less. So
yeah, that's why I said it. It all varies. Whoever's interested in what they want is what they get. So
yeah.
I did use Sprint. In fact, I remember I was a Sprint customer when before the first iPhone came out, and then once the iPhone came out, but I did not buy the first iPhone. I had the second iPhone, the 3G. Oh, wow. That's when I switched to AT&T. So that's how far back we go when I switched from Sprint, because I was a Sprint customer for a while, but boy, their coverage back in those days was horrible. And then there's Verizon. We haven't even talked about Verizon. I've never been involved with Verizon. I don't know if you've had or not, but I've never heard good things as far as customer service with them.
Only from the standpoint of having gone through the testing to see, what carrier I was going to keep. One thing that pushed me to AT&T way back when, and it's not the case any longer, but they were, I think, the only carrier. Well, first of all, they were the first iPhone carrier. They were the only carrier that had the iPhone. But yeah, but they were also the only one where you could talk and surf at the same time.
Right. Remember that?
Yeah.
I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah. And that was a deal breaker. That it was. Okay. I don't want to have to make it.
That's what made me switch from Sprint, because if there was some CDMA, not being able to surf and talk at the same time.
Yep. So
those days are long gone.
Yeah. But, it is interesting to see how it's evolved and how that affected our choices. Plenty of people, said, well, why would I want to do that? And it's like, well, gee, I can't imagine not. Now we didn't have the AirPods in like I do now, but you certainly had, earbuds in, and you're talking on the phone and you want to look something up as you're talking to someone else. That was invaluable.
Yeah. And then U.S. Cellular was a nationwide carrier, and it's kind of funny. U.S. Cellular, based in my hometown, Chicago, doesn't have any service in Chicago at all. I mean, their headquarters is here, but you can't get a U.S. Cellular account in Chicago, in Illinois. You have to go up to Wisconsin in order to get it, or anywhere else around the country that they have service. So they pulled out of this market, which was kind of interesting. I mean, in fact, a baseball stadium was named after their company for the Chicago White Sox for a long time. So I guess they're okay service, but they're more regional. They're not. I mean, they're not really a nationwide like the top 4 that we just talked about. So. Yeah, it's interesting. But the other thing of interest, and I've always kept hearing about this, is the acronym MVNO. Were you familiar with MVNO, the Mobile Virtual Network Operators?
No.
Yes, I wasn't either. So we put a link in the show notes about this. You hear of carriers like Cricket and Boost Mobile and Metro was Metro PCS. Now it's Metro by T-Mobile. And then another one would be Xfinity. Xfinity has service. They're an MVNO because they piggyback off of Verizon. And it explained why I couldn't get if I wanted to get an extra phone through Xfinity, because I don't do Verizon. So, another MVNO is Google, the Google Fi, Project Fi. And I talked about that the previous episodes too. I'm not sure if you had any discussion about this or not, but it was called Project Fi through Google, and it only worked with Android phones, and it was specifically the Pixel. The Pixel 2 and the Pixel 3, and then all the old Pixels and the Nexus phones. So it was working with that service. That's kind of where I was intrigued about eSIM, because a lot of the Pixels have eSIMs. They had that. So they've now it's gone from beta, which was called Project Fi, to Google Fi, and now they are offering the service on an iPhone. Well, the only little bit of caveat with Google Fi is there's a couple things that aren't going to work. Remember, we always talked about the blue bubble and the green bubble in iMessage, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that still doesn't work. And if you switch carriers, it's just like when people go from Android back to iPhone or vice versa. You hear nothing but complaints because then their iMessage doesn't work anymore, or their messaging's all messed up. So you got to proceed with caution. I know right now Google Fi for iPhone is in beta. You can request a SIM chip. It's not using eSIM right now for iPhone. But there's too many caveats for me to even consider it. I asked I have the SIM card kit. They sent it to me, but I'm like, I'm not touching it. I don't want it to mess up my iPhone at all. The interesting thing of what Google Fi does, though, is they use 3 carriers versus the rest of these folks. They use Sprint, T-Mobile, and US Cellular. So wherever you are, it senses which carrier gives you the best coverage when you're using their service. So you might be in an area where Sprint is really strong, so they're gonna put you on Sprint. If you're in an area where T-Mobile is better, you'll be on T-Mobile or US Cellular. So I find these types of carriers you can easily find that to be of some value. I wasn't sure if you're familiar with that or not.
If you really have the need to economize, but I would ask you that I would ask you, how much is your time worth? How much is your time worth, and how reliable do you need your phone to be? And if the answer is your time is not worth much and you really don't need the reliability, then by all means, dance with all these things. But I guess that's one reason I've kind of stuck with AT&T is sort of better the devil you know. And for the shortcomings that they do have, they've treated me pretty well. Their service is, it's not perfect. There's certainly certain areas of the U.S. where the service is terrible, but they're good enough, and I can work around their limitations. I mean, having my messaging messed up would be crazy, and having my phone jumping around from network to network, I don't have the experience with it, so I'm not putting it down. It would concern me because, okay, how many interrupted calls am I going to have?
Right.
And how many challenges am I going to have? I want something that works. The one thing I don't want to have to mess around with is my phone, for heaven's sakes.
Actually. I mean, as far as it's not for us, a Google Fi is not even an option. It's just not there right now for iPhone. But there are other ones that are the MVNOs. That's the Ting. I'm sure you've heard of Ting. That was always an advertiser a lot on podcasts. They are on Sprint and T-Mobile. And again, T-Mobile did it themselves. I know Walmart sells a service called Straight Talk. I'm sure you see a lot of advertising for them. They're on all 4 of the big carriers: AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon. So that's what's interesting about the carriers. There's so many different choices. I would probably, I agree with you. I would stick with probably the nationwide, the large carrier like an AT&T or a T-Mobile. Those would probably be my recommendations for it to work well with your iPhone, because you want to have, like you said, you want to have good service, and there's no question about it. Even Xfinity, like I said, they've been pushing a lot. Comcast Xfinity trying to push their mobile services. Again, they're selling it on Verizon. That's what they're basically doing. It's branded Xfinity, and they're selling it, but it's basically Verizon service. So, but they have to pay to have rights to be on those networks. So.
And I would flip around too, and it sounds like I'm being a little hypocritical, but by all means, explore this stuff. And if you never leave town, or if you seldom leave town, and you get the kind of service that you want or need, and you can get it at a better price, or get some of the perks that David was talking about, by all means, take advantage of it. But you have to be an educated, informed, intelligent consumer about it. You can't just look at the bottom line and say, oh, this is cheaper. This is what I'm going to go with.
Absolutely. All right. I think we've talked enough of cellular services. I hope everybody found it useful and giving you a little more education for your iPhone and making the right choice of which carrier you decide to go with. The great thing about getting an iPhone is you can go to the Apple Store and you can buy it. You just have to declare a carrier, but the phone is going to be unlocked, which is great. And then you can choose later if you decide you don't like the carrier anymore, you can go away and move to a different carrier. I use the trade-in services that Apple offers, and each year when I trade my phone in, I start off with another phone again. So that was when I bought this phone. I had originally bought my iPhone 10 with AT&T, and then what I did was I switched to T-Mobile while I still had that, and it was unlocked, so I didn't have to mess with it. So. This day and age, unlocked phones are pretty much a commonplace now. Whereas before, with all the contracts and all that stuff, they were locked. So
yeah.
Alrighty. Anyway, let's talk about some more fun stuff here. HomePod. You have the new HomePod, and if everybody knows, they've listened to this show and way in the past when I bought the HomePod originally, and I was not happy with it, and I returned it after 5 days. But then I decided. Of course, I got a lot of gift cards from my wife, which was very kind of her. She shared them with me, and I was able to buy the HomePod again at a more reduced price. And I guess that kind of motivates you a little bit to do that. So, what I decided to do after having the one HomePod, I said, well, I want to make a stereo out of this, and I have these old Bose. Speakers from the really old days when you plugged it in for your computer with subwoofer, and they don't even make them anymore. I wanted to create something in stereo because in my office I can have these HomePods. But the nice thing about the HomePods is I can move them anywhere in the house. So if I decide I want to set up a temporary area for a nice place for sound, I can bring both HomePods down and be able to. And listen to some music. So, and had you thought about doing this as of yet, John?
I don't want to talk about this, David, because you went ahead. You're tempting me, David. I don't need temptation, David.
Well, you've tempted me during the gift guide show, so
okay, that's fair. That's fair. I only have one HomePod.
Right.
We talk about
which is fine. It sounds great. There's no question about it.
It does, but everybody I've talked to that has two says, "Oh my God, it just takes it to the next level."
And you're seeing me in the video here. Oh wow!
Yeah,
it's like a wow factor. It really is. The cool thing about it, the way it does it, and what the link I'll have in the show notes is actually the support article from Apple how to create a HomePod stereo pair. At first, they didn't have this. You couldn't do it at first when the HomePod first came out. You had to wait, and that was what I guess my frustration was. I guess I wasn't patient. I should have just waited. But then again, it was probably good I didn't because I got a better value. But anyway, you didn't have that in the software until it came out. I believe it was in iOS 11.4. It might have even been iOS 12. It says iOS 11.4 or later is when they did the pairing. The pairing. So, it's very simple to set up. And what it does is it utilizes the HomeKit app, the Home app, and of course. Using the Home app, that's how you access the HomePod anyway. Well, you can go in and actually go through and actually make sure that you can connect them together and they play their music. I mean, it's very simple steps here. Creating a stereo pair, and you're very easy to be able to play it. Now, the only thing I'm kind of disappointed about is that it doesn't play the pair on a Mac. It only does it on an iPhone or an iPad. For some reason, they haven't mastered that yet. So you only have it sees the left and the right, however you name it, as far as the HomePod goes. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at this yet, but it's pretty straightforward.
No, I haven't. Educate us all. What do you mean that you can't see it on the Mac?
On the Mac, it does not see them as a stereo pair. When you do AirPlay on the iPhone. Or you go into HomeKit and tell it to play it. it sees it as a paired HomePod.
Oh, okay.
So you go on the iPad or if you go on the iPod on the iPhone, it shows it as a paired device because it pairs those two together. But the problem is, I guess I don't know the exact reason why it isn't showing up on the Mac, but it for some reason will not play stereo with the pair. It'll play on the left or the right, however you named it. So that's the only disappointment I had with this so far. But I would venture to say sometime soon something will change that'll make it easy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did not know that because I only have one HomePod, David. Mm-hmm. But
I'll send you the link of the really cheap price at Target. So.
Thank you for your help, David. No, I have to say that the HomePod, I have quite a few speakers in my home. Some for testing, and somehow they never seem to leave. I don't quite know why, but I have my favorites, and the HomePod is just amazing because you walk in the house and call out to the Miss S that play this, or sometimes I'll just say resume. From what I was listening to in the morning when I left, and
it resumes. I love it.
Yeah, your house is filled with good
even when you touch it, I have to be careful not to touch the HomePod that's not on my left here. You touch it, it starts playing right away. And so that's the other thing that kind of is something to get used to when you want to play it. So, but yeah, that's what's great about the HomePod is it just remembers what you played.
Yeah, if you're in the market for a quote unquote smart speaker, whatever that means, it is so seamless, and of course, it works with Apple Music, and we had that discussion earlier. So
right, that's that's what we want, Apple Music, and it's good with that. So
how about the really important question? Did you get a different color for each left and right, or did you?
Okay, space gray all the way, baby.
Okay, all right. That's the way I would go. So, okay, all right.
Yeah, no, I went space gray both ways. Yeah, I didn't. I could have. I just decided to stick with the. I like space gray for. That's all my iPhones are space gray and iPad, so it's always been my favorite color for my Apple devices. So,
what was that link again? No, never mind.
Target.com.
Yeah, thanks.
Check out this article if anybody hasn't already done this. If they do have two speakers, and we'll definitely get you hooked up here. So, with that, let's talk a little bit about one mention of any gear or picks. If you have anything that comes to your mind, Chuck, you could always chime in here. One thing really caught my eye was the Wemo Smart Plugs. And there's a lot of HomeKit stuff that's been talked about over this Christmas season. I mean, I know there's a lot of shows have talked about HomeKit, and really I'm pretty excited about it. I hadn't dabbled into HomeKit very much, but I did have an Eve plug, which I hadn't used for a while, was sitting in the box, and I also had a Wemo plug that was sitting in the box, and I said, let me get these because I got them. I think I got them basically for free. I don't remember how, but that doesn't matter. But when I plugged in the Eve's very, very good experience using that product. I'm sure you're familiar with their products, Chuck. Yeah, it's nice to have smart plugs because right now I have one hooked up to the Christmas tree. So when the tree comes on, we can set the timer through HomeKit. Well, Wemo was never supported by HomeKit. It was supported only by Amazon and by Google. So I was kind of surprised when I all of a sudden I read that there's some new firmware upgrades to these plugs that it now, once you update it, will now work with HomeKit. I said, well, what a smart thing to do. And Belkin is the company that markets the Wemo plugs, and it works. And you have HomeKit stuff, I assume, in your house, don't you not?
I have both HomeKit and the Echo stuff as well. Okay. My experience has been that the HomeKit, contrary to what some people say, the HomeKit stuff has been much more reliable. But there's some things that just aren't HomeKit at this point.
Right.
And of course, HomeKit always seems to be a little more expensive. But we should make the point that it's more expensive because there are certain things built into HomeKit that make them a lot more secure than some of the other devices.
This is true.
Depends on how paranoid you are and how much you're worried about that kind of thing. But yeah, if you haven't experimented with any of this stuff, it's way past time. you really need to be checking.
You got to do it. Yeah. I'm hooked now. I mean, I wanted to do I wanted to do a light switch because Eve had a really cool light switch, but unfortunately, the room I wanted to put it in wasn't wired properly for it, so I couldn't use it. But it would have been pretty cool to have a light switch that has automation. So, but there's so many different devices out there now as you can do this. These Wemo plugs are only I found them as cheap as $30 for a pair at Costco. Well, that price has since dropped, but now they're selling them for about $40 for a pair, which is still not terribly expensive. Amazon's selling them right around that price, about $20 or $22 each. They've got some 3-packs and 4-packs if you wanted to explore those as well. But the cool thing is when you buy them, they may not necessarily be ready for HomeKit, but you can once you get the Wemo app installed on your iPhone, you can get the firmware upgraded onto it, and voila, it works with HomeKit, and it adds another place where you can turn things on and off and set timers and all that stuff. So I highly recommend people dabble into the HomeKit world now.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on some of this because we're back to the discussion of I want things to work, and if you start, and I know I was teasing you, of course, about having all 3 devices in your
of course. But you're allowed to.
Yeah. But you also have to kind of take a look at this and say, okay, how much time am I potentially going to spend maintaining these things?
Sure. Right.
And that's so think about security, think about cost, think about standardizing on one or the other. The odds are that you're probably going to have to standardize on at least 2, and maybe like David 3, because some devices are not made for all of the formats. So,
right.
You really have to think about it, but they are, I mean, yeah, there was a time that just one of those Wemos would probably have gone for $50 or $60. And
right.
Now you get 2 for $30 as a special, 2 for $40 as a standard price. Wow. That's, you can almost.
No, it's good. That's what I'm saying. And all of the plugs have dropped tremendously in price. It's amazing. Anywhere between $20 and $25 and $30. I mean, they were like going $40, $50 before. So that's what kind of really attracted me too, is just the cost.
Yeah. And you were mentioning the Eve stuff. The Eve stuff is absolutely great.
Yeah, Legato is the company that was originally owned to Eve. I think they spun it off. But yeah, they make some amazing products. And I've always been a big supporter of their stuff as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about as far as any gear or anything you can think of, or we can?
David, it's. I look around. There's so much stuff that has been that came from the gift guide shows this year.
Yeah. That
I've been trying to keep my my hands off my credit card and off of Amazon.
Yes.
But I guess to kind of go through and continue with the theme of the home automation and the smart speakers.
Sure.
One of the places I would tell everybody to start is with the smart light bulbs. Because that is the thing I think that will make one of the biggest differences in your lives. And so I stand, and this is another place though that you have to really think about it, because if you get multiple competing standards, you have to think about which one do I want to tell to turn on or off which light. Right. So early on, I standardized on the U, and I have not wavered from that. The U bulbs they may be a little more expensive than some of the others, but they haven't let me down yet. The covered ones are fun to play with, but I still think that a great way to get started is just your basic, simple white light bulb, and you say, walk into the house and say, turn on the living room, to whichever assistant you set up, and boy, it's super convenient, and it's an absolute luxury to be able to lay in bed at night and say, hey, whoever, turn off the bedroom lights, and the bedroom lights go off. You don't have to reach over and struggle or look up into the light and wake yourself up. And again, I realize that's a first world problem, no question. But it's still it's fun. So that would probably be my pick to help people get started and that there's some good deals out there right now too. Great.
No, we'll put that in the show notes as well. I was dabbling into bulbs a little bit, but they can be kind of pricey, like you said. So, but they're getting there. They're getting there as far as that goes too. And it's definitely something that people should consider. So,
Absolutely.
Well, we're about to wrap up the show here. Chuck, where can everybody find you? If not, they don't know by now, but we'd like you to tell us anyway.
Yeah, you can find me at macvoices.com. That's where you'll see all the shows. David was on one of our gift guide shows that was particularly expensive for me. Thank you, David. But lots of interesting things going there. I also have a tech blog at macvoices.blog. And the best place to find me is on Twitter as @ChuckJoyner.
Great. Well, that's a wrap for this week. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address, feedback@intouchwithios.com. You can follow us on Twitter at InTouchWithIOS. You can subscribe in your favorite podcatcher as well. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, and even TuneIn Radio. Or better yet, go to our website at InTouchWithIOS.com, where all the links to how to listen to us are there, and you can reach us there as well. I am Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Twitter at DaveG65. Again, I would like to thank Chuck Joyner, for being my guest this week. Appreciate you being here, Chuck.
Thank you, David.
All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.